The opening words are a poem called Winter Morning by James Cruz. When I can no longer say thank you for this new day and the waking into it, for the cold scrape of the kitchen chair and the ticking of the space heater glowing orange as it warms the floor near my feet. I know it's because I've been fooled again by the selfish, unruly man who lives in me and believes he deserves only safety and comfort. But if I pause as I do now and watch the streetlights outside flashing off one by one like old men blinking their cloudy eyes, if I listen to my tired neighbors slamming car doors hard against the morning and see the steaming coffee in their mugs, kissing chapped lips as they sip, and exhale each of their worries white into the icy air around their faces, then I can remember this one life is a gift each of us was handed and told to open, to untie the bow and tear off the paper, and to look inside and to be grateful for whatever you find, even if it is only the scent of a tangerine that lingers on the fingers long after you've finished peeling it. This is called the medicine of surrender. The medicine of surrender comes with no spoonful of sugar, no promises, no backup plans, no returns, no insurance. The medicine of surrender never tastes the way you expect, never tastes the same the next time, seldom has the hoped-for effect. And if there were some part of you that thought it might not be affected, that thought it might hold back, that part is most likely the first part to be flooded with the relentless truth of what is. Oh, surrender, the surest medicine that exists. There are infinite side effects: wonder, freedom, rawness. It's like opening the dictionary to the word heaven or obliteration and knowing that it is the same thing. It's like playing spin the bottle with life and you French kiss whatever you get. It's the only remedy that can help you be whole. It is the only real medicine there is. When I was 5 or 6, I learned what it meant to cry uncle. And I was taught this lesson by my older brother. My arm bent behind my back and his weight pinning me fully to the floor. He was doing me no favor as he instructed me to cry uncle in order to be freed from his brotherly torture. I would rather not have been humiliated into surrender, but he was bigger and stronger than me. And unless my parents were within earshot, my options were limited. So cry uncle I did, more times than I like to remember. That is the stench of humiliation. My big brother didn't intend to send all that into motion, and he wasn't alone in teaching me that lesson. I know that my own dad's perspective was that I had to learn how to defend myself. that was, of course, another era in parenthood. I probably inflicted some measure of the same on my little brother, I probably should confess. But I wasn't quite as thrilled to dominate as my older brother was. Families. My reflection this morning is something of an invitation to you good folks to join me in something of a reconstitution of the notion of surrender that makes it less of a response to domination and perhaps more of a path of virtue and wisdom in many situations we end up having to face in the course of living. This is, I recognize, a significant leap in understanding. So I ask you to just bear with me. My thinking on the subject has been buzzing around my head for quite a long time. I can't recall exactly what got me exploring this concept. A part was likely the increasing presence of Islam in our local communities, and the recognition that strikes some of us as the submissive role that women play in those cultures. From our Western perspective, it can seem that the women have surrendered their autonomy, their individuality. But a deeper examination of Islam suggests that there is, in fact, a kind of freedom that comes in their surrender. A freedom to not necessarily be caught up in all of what most people are caught up in terms of status and appearance, and so forth. We don't have to necessarily agree with that, but or wish it for ourselves, but we're not called to do that. Our simple task is to deepen our insight and understanding of different ways that people will approach this idea about surrender or submission. Our approval is not something that is sought or required. What moved surrender up in my sermon lists and folder of what might be the next few subjects I preach about, it moved up to the place it became after I got a postcard from a friend several months ago now. I don't think it was meant as any sort of hidden message to me, some subversive notion that he wanted to sort of inculcate in my thinking. But it set me back on my feet when I read it, and I couldn't quite get it out of my mind. Just a little postcard, and the image was a simple line drawing of a person lying prostrate on the floor with their hands clasped in front of them and their head touching the floor between their hands. And then there were just a few words printed on this card. And it said, "Try something different. Surrender." Try something different. Surrender. I thought to myself, yeah, that would be different, all right. It was one of those paradoxes that had never occurred to me before, and as refreshingly appealing as it first struck me, I found myself strongly resisting the idea that surrendering was some kind of a constructive means of resolving tensions and conflicts and bafflements that creep into all of our souls. Surrender? How very silly. Very. But like things like that get stuck in a crevice in your brain, it just wouldn't go away. I even started to imagine, well, how could that work? In the midst of a billing dispute with the hospital, surrender seemed perverse. While finding myself being pressured to support a candidate that I opposed, I was in no mood to surrender. And when the state trooper returned to my car with a ticket in his hand because I had been talking on the phone while driving, well, I surrendered. But in general, I prefer to hold my ground firmly. And then 2 weeks ago, I had a phone conversation with my sister, Susan. She lives in Atlanta, so we don't see each other terribly frequently, and I just kind of called in the offhand moment to say hello. But much to my surprise, the exchange promptly turned incredibly hostile, at least on her part. And I quickly realized, well, maybe it wasn't all that quick, that her anger was something that she had for some reason been storing up, and that the hostility toward me was most likely about some ancient issue that I accept that I'll never come to fully comprehend. And maybe she'll never understand it either. And then all of a sudden the light came on. Surrender. And that's what I did. I let go of wanting to be right. I gave up trying to convince her of my perspective, which she refused to see. And of course, as you might expect, my strategy took the air out of her balloon entirely. As I look back on it, it seemed that my resistance was fueling her outrage. And without, I guess, my participation in this argument, the fight collapsed. Now, this isn't to say we ended on a happy note, and I haven't talked to her since. But I've been occupied. And I haven't heard from her. Surrender didn't fix the situation, but it halted the hostilities and left me with at least some kind of sense of peace in that moment for now. There'll be more work to be done. I'm under no illusion that this tactic of surrender will seem sensible at first blush to many of you. We have spent decades of life living in this competitive culture we have, in which we've been trained to reject any suggestion or move toward surrender. In just about every context of our lives. I know I learned it largely from my own dad. This refusal to surrender. I've quoted him before about this, you may remember, but almost any time there was any kind of challenge or upset or difficulty, the response was, action brings confidence and relief. That's all he could ever say. Action brings confidence and relief. Basically, ignore anything you're feeling and just proceed ahead. Don't examine what may be causing these moments of doubt or concern or wonder, but move ahead in action. And it will bring confidence and relief. That was advice he gave, whether it was requested or not. And of the 4 of us offspring in my family, his daughter follows very closely in my dad's footsteps. Fight to the finish is more likely her inherent response to conflict. Department store managers all across Atlanta fear her. And you know, she likes it that way. No judgment. Well, maybe a little. Just an observation made from 62 years of watching her. Acclimating to this altered sense of surrender is not something that comes naturally. It's what gave me pause when that postcard arrived out of the blue in my mailbox. Try something different. Surrender. How could my friend have ever known what that little card would mean out of the blue? Of course, for most of us, the first images that come to mind are things like Lee surrendering to Grant at Appomattox. It comes along with it an acknowledgement of failure, of defeat, of humiliation when we surrender. And it surely means many of those things. That much we're not going to change. But it means also something more, something deeper, something powerful in a very different sense, and that I will now try to explain. The first observation I want to make may be the most important one. It has to do with one's self-awareness and sensitivity. You need to be paying attention. Perhaps that's the core of it. And your mind is one tool to help you do that. But if you're anything like me, it's more likely that your body is going to give you the first signals that something is amiss. And that's what you have to pay attention to. We're all different, so it might be a pit in your stomach. It might be a flush to your cheeks, a tightness in your chest. These are messages for us. And they don't go away until we pay attention to them. And the kind of circumstances when these show up differ for all of us. In psychological language, we respond, and it's generally called fight or flight in response to issues, stresses that enter into our life. And I understand that, and I believe in that and understand it, but I would maintain that spiritually there is another option to fight or flight. There is a third path, perhaps, and that's surrender. Surrender becomes an option, a choice that we can make that's not rooted in our most primitive biological reaction, that aren't really much more different than our cave person ancestors managed in their own lives. What's come clearer to me in time is that surrender is something that is grounded in humility. It moves me beyond the dichotomy of winning and losing. And in some ways, it makes me an observer to a situation as much as a participant in it. Like with my phone entanglement with my sister, I was not getting anywhere being a participant in the conversation. And if anything, I was maybe making it worse. But when I took the position of almost a disinterested party in this engagement, and I surrendered, everything changed. My sense of restraint paradoxically gave me more power and influence in how that conversation ensued. I'm not suggesting this as some kind of a trick. It's simply, as I look at it, a transformative means of engagement. Beyond the urgency of awareness, surrender turns out to be a door to the unexpected. As the poet proclaimed, "O surrender, the sweetest medicine that exists. There are infinite side effects, wonder, freedom, and rawness." Wonder, freedom, rawness. I've come to think of surrender as a kind of radical acceptance. Sometimes it may strike us as an illogical acceptance or even an absurd one. As most of you know, 2024 has not been a spectacular year for me. I've been hospitalized 4 times for various reasons, and some of them quite serious. And on top of ongoing treatment for 2 forms of cancer, there have been some rather discouraging times when hope made itself scarce. The accumulating worry and anxiety took on the form of a frightening monster that seemed to have every intention of winning our battle. And despite the wizardry of modern medicine and the warlocks in their white coats, and my own fierce intentions to vanquish the cancers, my duel with these diseases was beginning to tire me out. And I knew what losing meant, but I wasn't so sure what winning meant. What was that prize? Reaching 80, 75, 70, 67? Just what was I fighting for? And lying in my hospital bed at the Cleveland Clinic one night last month, thinking about that postcard I had gotten, it quietly and gently came over me. I would try something different. I would surrender. Not the giving up kind of surrender, but the liberating kind of surrender. The kind that holds at its heart a different sort of healing. Not the curing kind of healing, but the healing that restores wisdom and gratitude in its full body to the soul. Because I'm not my illness, and I won't let myself be absorbed by it. I am actually free of it. And the worst thing I could do would become so entangled with it in the fight against it that I would lose myself. I don't believe I'm playing games with myself here. When I say I am surrendering to this illness, the last thing I'm doing is casting aside the course of treatments that my body is subjected to, because I trust that I am better off for it than foolishly thinking I could wish away these devilish cells that want to consume me. I am not waving the white flag and giving up, that is a kind of surrender that is not an option. What I surrender is nothing more or less than pouring endless amounts of energy, thoughts, worry, distress, anxiety, to stop putting those into the process of resistance. Because I'm sure that those things don't do the slightest good toward reining in its disease process that creation itself has set in motion in my body. So when I surrender the struggle that consumes so much of my positive and constructive energy and intentions, I discover I have all of that power left to sustain what I love about being alive. I'm not pouring it into a fight that I cannot myself win. But I can pour it and put that resistance into the things that I love about being alive. Whether that's for another week, or another year, or I should certainly hope another presidential term. I should admit this. 20 years ago, I would have heard a sermon like this and been highly skeptical. But then again, back then, I was a 46-year-old man, healthy. My first cancer was 3 years away. And yes, I fought pretty hard back then, but I didn't win in the way that I thought would count, and I lost some good time in the process. I had time to be wise enough now to surrender. And because of that, I was able to walk my daughters down the aisle at their weddings and hold 5 baby grandchildren and feel the love of new friends and plant trees in my house and hold my parents' hands as they reached the end of their lives. So I see surrender as a gift that I have chosen for myself, and in circumstances, a gift I would wish for each of you. Surrender that brings you freedom and wonder. Things just waiting for us to trust our very deepest selves, to be open to life's most unexpected gifts. So put this thought away for the time you may need it yourself, to try something different. Surrender.